Hello everyone, welcome back to Cogs of Community, Rotary, Halifax, Harbour. My name is Thomas Paul, and this is part 2 of our discussion with Louisa Horn about membership. Now, if you haven't listened to part 1, you really should go back and listen to it. It's interesting, it's sobering, it's a real good perspective of what the stats and what the situation is with membership within Rotary, but also, like you mentioned, volunteer organizations in general. This part is more exciting. And I'll just mention again, if you are just listening to part 2, we do have a video version of this, so you can find us on YouTube and on the Spotify app. And if you are watching us but rather listen, you can go to your favorite podcast app and just look for Cogs of Community. We'd love to hear what people think by visiting our social media, Rotary Halifax Harbour, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. We're on a lot, not quite on TikTok yet, but if you have any suggestions or feedback, we'd love to hear what people think. And so, Louisa, we're going to keep on going with more fun and exciting stuff.
Okay.
So this is your bread and butter, I think. When I think about cool making, well, let's start right from the beginning. I've heard you talk about this for a while, making clubs irresistible. And I'd love you to kind of expand on what that is and why you think that's a recipe for success.
Well, that is a phrase I've been using for quite some time, and I'm just thrilled that it's being used a little more broadly now. And I love to talk to clubs about what it looks like and what it means. And to me, something that's irresistible is so compelling and so magnetic almost that you almost can't resist it. So I think about our own club that meets early on a Friday morning, 7:15 a.m. on a cold, dark winter day, and I live outside the city. I have a choice every single time. Am I going to leave home or am I going to stay put? Well, it has to be compelling. It has to be irresistible for me to want to do that. There have to be things about it that are so compelling that I'm going to make that choice over and over to be involved. Yeah. And so when we think about what makes a club successful, and we talk about vibrant clubs and lots of different words that can be used, I think it helps when clubs think about, are they that compelling? Is their value proposition such that people are going to make that choice over and over to choose whatever's happening, whether it's a service project, a social, regular activity, whatever it is, am I going to choose to be there versus whatever else I could be doing right now? If so, that's a pretty irresistible club.
Yeah.
And those are the ways that I like for clubs to think about themselves when they look in the mirror to try and decide, what can we do to be more successful, to be more vibrant, to be growing, to be whatever they want to be. And growth can be in all kinds of ways. It can be numbers, it can be diversity, it can be dollars and cents, it can be contributions, it can be whatever people want the growth to be. How do we make that happen? And thinking about being irresistible is one of the ways to get there.
Right. So you're your traditional club, and you're like, okay, we're going to do something. We're going to shake things up. We're going to become an irresistible club. We're looking in the mirror, and I say, gosh, I really kind of like the way things are right now, but I'm willing to look outside and to kind of explore options. Where do you think? I know there's a lot to look at, but where's the first kind of easy? I would say easy. But let's start with something that's easy to get us started.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm glad that you're willing to look outside, because that's really step one. For a club to change, it has to want to change, right? Yeah. Clubs that are completely resistant and there's not the compelling reason or the leadership that can inspire that sort of thinking probably aren't going to change. And they will continue on whatever path they're on now. It's likely that they will continue that way. But you've said you're willing to look outside. You like your traditional club, but you're willing to look. So what are you going to look at? Well, you're going to look in the mirror and you're going to gather some data. And then you're going to think about, how do we become even more impactful in our community? And how do you define community? Do you mean the local community or the broader global community? You decide what the community is. What are we going to do? Well, probably going to start with a bit of a community assessment, because maybe within your traditional club, somebody says, oh, we need to do a new park, and somebody else says, no, we need to be working on food security, and somebody else has another idea. We need to really understand, where are the needs in the community and how can we have the most impact on those? Where can we have the biggest opportunity to make a difference? So we need to do a community assessment. Then we're going to look at aspects of the club itself, and we're going to think about, People that have come and visited us, we haven't seen those people again. Why not? Is it the time? Is it the place? Is it the cost? Is it the frequency? Is it the culture? What is it? And so we're going to do some surveys internally and people that have left or people that have visited and haven't come back. Data, data, data.
Yeah.
We want to collect as much as we can. So now we've got all this data. We know a little bit more about our club and what people think about it. We know a bit more about our community and where we can have an impact. Then we decide, okay, which one are we going to pick? Where are we going to start? Okay. What partners do we want to have? And how do we move forward?
Okay, so there's a lot to get started, but it's like you said, recognizing what we are right now, looking in the mirror. And like I said in the previous episode, I really like data. So I like the idea of doing a survey of your community, assessing a needs assessment, understand what your club wants to do, what your community needs. Now, when I think about that feedback, sometimes it's a little bit hard to hear it. But I think maybe to kind of rephrase it, I would think, this is hard to hear, but people are already thinking this. So now we know it. Right. So now we can work with that and we can think, how can we attract, let's say we survey someone who didn't return and this is their feedback. And you'd be like, okay, I think we can work with that because it's not that hard to change small things. And now we can get this person back and maybe there'll be a catalyst for new things.
Exactly. Well, and that happened in our own club some years ago when we did a survey of people who had left and people who had visited. This would probably be 15 years ago, I think now, when we went through a fairly major transition. And we learned some things about language that we used, about some of the structural things, about a fundraiser that was beloved, but really wasn't hitting the mark anymore and needed to be retired. And that was a tough one. There's a grieving process sometimes when those things happen. But when you had the data in front of you, then even those that were really attached to that were able to say, okay, I guess it's time, right? Everything has a time.
Now, when you start implementing some ideas, let's say everyone comes up with some ideas, I understand that some things might take time. There may be a bit of fear of failure, but I would imagine, and I think in most things in life, a little bit of failure is okay. It's okay to try things and be like, you know what, we haven't quite hit the mark here. Either we tweak it or we will pull back and try something different. It's better to try something reasonable that the club is interested in and say, it hasn't quite worked how we want, but we can recognize it and retweak, reevaluate.
Definitely.
And keep moving forward.
In fact, I would encourage that, especially if a club is saying, oh, we want to try this new thing. We want to change our meeting structure. We want to change our meeting time. We want to change something else, even something simple. I'll call those simple, even though they're not really simple, but let's say it is. Well, let's just try it for the next month or two and see how it works. And if we're not happy with it, well, let's try a different one and see if we can find a combination that's going to work better. Or if it's a shift in how you approach orienting new members. Well, let's try it this way for the next couple of members that come in and see if we get some better feedback from them. And if so, we'll tweak it again. That's absolutely okay. And if we look at organizations, let's take Microsoft. I mean, my goodness, we know that they put out, software that I think they probably know there are a few things wrong with it sometimes, and they want that feedback. Right? That's the whole model to do that. If we have the analysis paralysis of thinking we've got to have the perfect solution, nothing's going to change. We have to try things and see how it goes, recognizing that the first year of a new fundraiser might not be fantastic, or the first time we run a partnership program with a brand new corporate member or a new community partner. We might not have all of the little details worked out, but let's just try it and we'll refine it, and next year we'll do better.
But I think what I like there is that kind of cyclical thing. So you start something, you evaluate it, you tweak it, and you kind of keep it going. It's not a set and forget. So I think that's almost a bit too ezy to say, let's just try this one thing, it will solve all our problems and bring on the new members, right?
There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing that a club can take on this magical solution and it's going to solve the problems. That's not going to happen. And we need to have the leadership and we need to have the support of club members to not be too quick to jump on somebody that wanted to try something new. We see that from time to time in Rotary, that people say, well, let's try something new. It doesn't work the first time, and everybody's just, whoosh, let's get rid of that. And we might lose that person over it. No, we need to be supportive and say, okay, didn't necessarily have all the outcomes we wanted, but how can we do it differently?
Absolutely.
That's important.
And I love that thing of Doug Logan, who's another member of our club, who's been involved with membership at the zone level as well. And he used the word about flipping the conversation. Instead of people coming in and saying, this is what we do, come join us, he says, what do you want to do?
Exactly. That is a huge shift for a lot of clubs that in the past have had their list of committees and their list of jobs. And so they do a fireside chat with a potential new member and say, oh, you work in a bank. We need a new treasurer. And the last thing that person wants to do is be the treasurer. On their time off is to be the treasurer. But we've done that over and over. Instead, if we said to that person, we can enable something that you're passionate about. What would you like to do differently in this community? What would you like to be able to make happen that we can maybe enable for you? And maybe you say something to do with food security. And we've never done anything about food security before. Fantastic. Let's figure out how we can make that happen.
And I think one of the aspects of Rotary is to learn new skills.
Absolutely.
And if you're a person who wants to be in service, give to the community, but also learn something new, whether it's running an event or even speaking in front of people or learning a new skill, because like our club, we had a workshop for a while, and anyone could go there and I mean, like, I'm newer to power tools, but you could go and learn from people that have done it their whole life.
And that's such a huge benefit of Rotary. And you'll hear that from people over and over, that their experiences in Rotary have had an impact on their professional development and their work life. With the things you've said, whether it's organizing events or public speaking, all of those things are possible.
Now, you mentioned one of the points is diversity. And diversity, I think it's pretty well established that the more diverse a club is, the more perspectives, the better it's able to work through challenges. And even in communities, the more diverse your group is, or the more it looks and acts the way your community is, the better outcomes you have. Well, that's great, but becoming a more diverse club is a little difficult. And now, one of the things, and I've told you this before, one of the reasons I came to this current club was its diversity, in the sense that it had a diverse age range. It had a gender split. At the time, I think we're still pretty close to that. But we are also a diverse club, and becoming more diverse in both ethnic backgrounds. Even though we're not a religious organization, we have people from different perspectives. We have people with sexual orientations. Like, all these things make us a better club. But that's not easy. That's not easy at all. So let's say you recognize, okay, our club could do with a more diverse group. How do you do it?
Great question. And we did ask that question some number of years ago and recognized that we most definitely did not reflect our community. And we probably still don't. I don't know that any club does, but it's a great way of thinking about diversity and all of the many lenses. And you mentioned many of them, but there are many more, whether it's career background, education levels, geography. There's so many lenses of diversity. And it does take work. It's not an easy thing to just say, oh, let's be more diverse. There are a lot of steps, I think, that people need to consider. Sometimes it's education, and it may be that as part of that goal of being more reflective of a community, you may need to decide, well, we're going to have some programs, meeting programs, if a club is doing that for the next 6 months. Let's do a month on this particular area. Let's do a month on another area. Let's do a month on something else to learn. So it's a learning process so that everybody is understanding, whether it's the more traditional, I'll call it traditional sort of corporate diversity training kinds of things, or whether it's inviting people from different communities to come and speak at your club and just learn about maybe different ethnic groups or different groups of, in our case, new Canadians that we've welcomed so many over the last number of years, to learn about some of the experiences that they've had and to think, okay, part of this community assessment piece is I'm learning more about what the needs are. Maybe we can start a satellite that addresses some of those issues for that particular group. But it takes time. It takes strong leadership. It takes a group of people who are willing to try some things and do some things differently, again, right back to those key things. It takes the agility and the intention, right? So much of this is around intention of having very clear goals, that if this is something that's important to us and we have set this goal, we have the leadership to help us get there. Not everybody is going to be jumping up and down with enthusiasm for every one of those ideas.
Yeah.
But we've got a core group that's willing to learn, and perhaps it means going and visiting a couple of other groups to learn more so that we can get started. In our case, some years ago, we were, as far as we know, the first club in the world to participate in a pride parade. Well, that was a controversial thing the first year. And some people said, no, not interested. Others said, where do I sign up? I'm ready to go. And it was an impactful thing, and it's continued ever since. But it takes a little bit of, it's risk-taking,
Yeah.
of course, because you're trying something new that hasn't been done. It's risk-taking because you are going to get those different reactions, whatever it might be that you're trying. But we had a core group of people that was willing to give it a try and
Yeah.
see what happens.
And the more I learn about everything in Rotary, the more I feel everything's interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
In more ways, it's almost, so if you think about having a more diverse group, you
Mm-hmm.
think about the outcomes. So you have all the ability to engage with all sorts of different communities, to have the experience, to have the backgrounds, but also it's a membership attraction thing.
Sure.
You know, if I walk into a room, any room, with a group of people, we tend to want to feel comfortable and welcome, and we can feel more comfortable and welcome regardless of our group's intention if we feel that there's people that are like us.
Of course.
And not to say that's going to bring everybody in or
No.
turn people away, but there's something really nice about coming into the room and feeling like you're
belonging.
belonging.
You're talking about belonging,
Yeah.
right? And that is a key piece of Rotary that we need to be all the time thinking about, and intentionally again looking at ways to help people feel like they belong. Help adjust the environment, the context, the culture, the structure, the language. Again, all of those things are part of giving people the opportunity to have a sense of belonging, and that is critical for attracting new people.
Okay, that's fantastic. Now, you get to see it. You travel quite a lot. You go to a lot of Rotary clubs. You get to see good, the great, the not so good, the not so great. But I'm sure you've seen. Can you think of? I'd love to hear some kind of really cool examples of stuff that's not necessarily game changing, but just you're like, oh, that is really cool. And you tell me.
Well, just the nature of Rotary is that every single club is different, right? Because clubs are autonomous. We have that foundation that everybody has underneath, and we have some common goals around polio and other things. But every single club is different. And it's fascinating to visit clubs in different countries. And I have had the good fortune to be at about 23 countries, I think, that I've visited clubs. And they are from one end of the spectrum to the other, of formality and structure and tradition and ritual and head tables and marching in and music and whatever, from that end all the way through to basically being in a beach bar with, shorts and flip-flops and doing whatever, all and everything in between, in terms of what a club meeting might look like. And that's super interesting. And then when you hear about the partnerships and the projects, that's where it gets really exciting, and where you start to develop connections. And so you'll hear about a project and think, oh, I'd love to know more about that project. Or you hear about something happening in another part of the world, or even in our own country, that somebody has developed a partnership with a community organization, and you think, oh, how can we leverage that? How can we learn from that? Those are the things that are most exciting to me, to get those ideas and see what's possible. Because as you said, with diversity within a club, or what you see when you travel and have a chance to visit another club, which is, to me, is one of the best benefits of Rotary, that you can be anywhere in the world, look up the nearest Rotary club that meets on a Monday in the middle of the day, and away you go, and you are immediately welcomed. And you immediately have a group of people to give you advice about that city and what you want to do for the next few days in that city, but also to share their Rotary experience with you. So you have immediate friends, right? That's how Rotary started, with a fellowship kind of approach. And so you have it immediately when you travel. So I think the best stories are really around those ideas and the differences of what people are doing. And then, you often hear stories of, oh, I was walking through an airport and somebody saw my pin, and you have this great conversation. Well, I've had some amazing experiences where connections with Rotarians in other parts of the world that I've never even met have had an impact, right down to my younger daughter is living in Belfast and was buying a house and said, Mom, what do I do to buy this house? I don't know. I know nothing about real estate in Ireland, but give me a minute.
Yeah.
And literally in half an hour, I was back to her with the name of the past president of a club in Belfast who ran a real estate practice within a law firm.
Yeah.
And so half an hour later, I said, here's a name and a number to call.
Yeah.
And so you have a trusted person to call in a strange country where you know nothing about a particular aspect. Boom, you've got a Rotarian who's going to help you. Right? That's just fantastic when you can do that. So, yeah, I love it.
And that's great. And I think, so what I kind of hear as well, I think as Rotary clubs, it's great to sometimes look in and really to kind of say, wow, we're doing some really good stuff, but also look out. Look at what your neighbors. We're lucky enough that we live in a region that has several Rotary clubs, which I think is fantastic. I think we should do probably more to kind of interact with them and say, what are you guys doing? And this is not a matter of saying, we're doing this and we're better or anything like that. It's not a boasting.
No.
Like they have some really cool ideas, and also recognizing that not everything every other club can do, we can do. Like for example, I'd love the idea of a beachside hut, but unfortunately, middle of winter on that Friday morning might not go over so well with flip-flops. But that's really cool. And you mentioned leverage about something. Membership numbers are very important, but our ability to partnerships.
Right.
What does a partnership mean? Like,
oh, partnerships are just incredible for leverage. So we're seeing Rotary clubs partner with community groups. Could be that there's a local, I don't know, let's say it's a local environmental group that's doing something with coastline cleanup, and they have a group of people who are committed to that. And by partnering with them, suddenly 1 + 1 = 3 or 5. Right. And then because you've now partnered with this other group, you have eligibility to access this foundation funding from somewhere else. And then the university might be interested because there's a research opportunity. And suddenly you've got this amazing project that's leveraging all of these groups and has certainly a membership attraction perspective to it. But that's not the end game necessarily. That's like a bonus of the partnership. The end game is you've had way more impact that you would have had on your own, right? So if a group of 20 people go and clean up a shoreline, fantastic, good thing to do. You've gathered however many tons of garbage. But if you've enabled 4 or 5 different groups and now you've got a youth education program associated with it and you've been able to access funding for a university person, wow, you've got something incredible. So Rotary enables that, and we can do that now in a way that we probably didn't think about a lot in the past. We tended in the more traditional days, we were autonomous for sure, but tended to kind of keep our arms around our projects a little more. So when I look at the things that give hope for the future, some of the flexibility that we have now, whether it's to be encouraged to think about partnerships, even with other service groups. Who would have thought Rotary and Lions and Kiwanis and the United Way and the university and whatever, all can do things together. We also have opportunities to look at satellite clubs or brand new clubs that are cause-based or interest-based. So we could say, let's have a club or a satellite that is specifically focused on water or specifically focused on food security or whatever it might be that the community assessment has told us is a need that we can help to fill. So a cause or an interest. The interest might be that there are a group of people who get together because they're all retired employees from whatever company, and they've got this little social group, and they think, gee, we'd like to do something good for the community. Well, let's do a satellite with all of those people, or all veterans, or whatever it might be, and look at what that group of people with a common interest might be able to do. Leverage that as well. We have that flexibility now as we look at being agile, as we look at our reach, to reach out to different groups in different ways, and as we look at how we can engage people in new ways to have an impact. All of those things are wide open in terms of the thinking about how to make them happen.
Now you hit some key words there because, like I said, everything is interconnected in many different ways. And so Rotary has an action plan that encompasses 4, and I'm going to do my best to remember all 4 of them here. But if you apply those with a membership perspective, or even if you don't, if you apply those to your club, they will inherently bring membership in. So expand our reach. Okay, here we go. Expand our reach. Increase membership participant engagement.
Yes.
You have to help me out.
And I used all of them in the last thing. So impact, right?
Okay.
It's all about impact.
Yeah.
And so that's an important one, because sometimes we do things because we've always done them, even though the impact might not be there.
Yeah.
Right. So the engagement of people, the reach and the diversity is a piece of that. And then be agile.
Yeah.
Be willing to take risks and change and try new things. If we can do all of those things, that is the action plan that we've been given that says, gosh, you could be working in any area from a service perspective, any of those avenues of service and areas of focus. There's not much that isn't covered by those if you had a particular interest. But let's think about all of those as we consider, where are we going to have the most impact, and how can we leverage other opportunities to do that?
And what's fascinating is you don't obviously need to listen to this podcast to get that action plan, because you can go to Rotary's website, you can get the Rotary International Action Plan. And then what we've done in our club is we've taken those themes and then we've put some kind of plans underneath it within that structure.
Right.
And we're working through it. And that's hopefully going to pull us through the next few years as a strategic plan. But even informally, it's a great way to kind of look at, if you're doing your assessment of the club, because it's a great way to kind of stand back and say, okay, this is the stuff we do. How can we increase participant engagement? How can we be more impactful? And all those, to me, that's just great. It gives
fantastic.
It's a great kind of step forward.
Yeah. No, those are part of what we do internally. And then we have to look externally and think about the fact that the world around us is changing all the time. And Rotary today is in a world that looks very different than Rotary 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And so we have to be prepared. The agility and the adapting part comes into play there. When we say people's work life is very different than it was in the past, very, very different. People's family structures and family life is very different than it was in the past. And communities have changed. So how do we take all of those things about Rotary and imagine them in this different context with respect to working and family life and communities, and figure out new ways to be Rotary? That's our challenge.
But with all that's changing, there's still always a desire for people to want to do stuff, to serve their community. And so, like you said, how that happens is changing. The world around us is changing. And we just got to find, without using the magic silver bullet analogy, we just got to find the right ways to get people involved. And I think some of the things you mentioned are just incredible, because I use myself as an example. I don't have a traditional schedule. And one of the things that brought me back into Rotary was COVID. As bizarre as it is, because we went online. And suddenly now I can join Rotary meeting whenever. And when we came out of I came out of COVID, we embraced a hybrid model, which is not an easy model to maintain, but it allows me to stay engaged as someone who has a non-traditional schedule. And I think about all the other people that want to give back, that can't come to a meeting. And so I'm really proud to be part of this club, and I'm also very excited about the opportunities.
Well, and you've described exactly what the thinking needs to be, is that yes, you have a very non-traditional schedule. It's most definitely not 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And there are lots of other people with similar challenges, whether it's their work schedule, their family schedule, whatever. So we have to think about how we enable those people to participate. And it's not going to be that they come to a meeting every week. It's just not. And so how do we be Rotary in a different way to make sure that those people have the opportunity to contribute? Because yes, they want to, but how do they do it in a way that fits their context, not fitting in the box that we want to put everybody in of coming to a meeting every week, but how do they fit in the bigger picture to have an impact in a way that works in their life? That's what we need to be doing.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Louisa. I mean, if there was anything you wanted to add, but
well, gosh, we could go on forever. I can talk about membership a lot, because until
the battery of the
camera dies, for sure. No, it's a great topic, and it's one that I love to talk about, and I'm happy to talk to anybody that has ideas, and certainly people within our zone 28 or beyond. If there are ideas or thoughts that people have, don't hesitate to connect with me. I'd love to hear about it.
Perfect. We'll put the best way to connect you in our show notes. Please. If anyone wants to connect with Louisa, because like I say, you talk about Rotary a lot, but you have a lot of good things to talk about, and we love talking to you about it. And honestly, it's just fascinating. And all I can say is thank you so much for this. And I think even though we're doing this in August, which is the theme month, membership, but membership is a discussion all year round.
All year round, and everybody's job. It's not
Yeah.
just the membership chair, it's everybody's job.
Right, absolutely. So that really concludes this podcast, second part two of two of talking about membership. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, Louisa.
Thank you,
like I said from the beginning, you can find Rotary Halifax Harbour on various social media channels. Just have to search Rotary Halifax Harbour. We spell Harbour Harbour, but you'll probably find us. We're also on YouTube, and podcast is called Cogs of Community, the one you're listening to right now. And we'd love to hear people's feedback and share.
Share. And this is great service that you're doing, Tom, in making this happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Having fun with it too.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.